I'm just trying to decide if I'm comfortable even talking about that.
This one's wife. The bubble has burst. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. There'll be those of you who will form the view that the bubble burst with this one's wife and Prince Harry quite a number of years ago. For some of you, there'll be a personal bubble in relation to Huggy and Druggy, the gruesome twosome, where the bubble burst for you because you saw through what was going on. You saw her as an unsavoury individual, perhaps learning from me about her narcissism, and Harry as the hapless, vindictive, bitter, and easily led individual, ginger dimwit that he is. For you, it may well have been when you witnessed the engagement interview and you thought to yourself, this doesn't ring true for me. Is he kind? Is he nice? No. The way that she's grabbing him, it doesn't look authentic to me. Something's amiss here. For others of you, it may have been the behaviour that took place around her wedding. And then again, there may have been instances where, rather than it being one sudden moment of realisation, but there was a steady progression of doubt that crept in as you saw various things that she said and did, and then one day it all came together and that bubble burst. For many, it will have been around the infamous Oprah interview. But one place where the bubble did not burst as quickly was in the United States. Undoubtedly, there'll be those of you who are listeners from the United States who will have recognised at an early juncture that there was something problematic, and that you recognise that in kinship with those in the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand and elsewhere, Canada and so forth, that saw through the veneer and the facade that she was utilising. Sections of the British media also burst the bubble early on, finding that she was an unlikable individual. But where the bubble persisted for some time was in the US media. Now, not everybody bought into it. We note, for instance, that Meghan Kelly has been a long-time disapprover of this one's wife and Harry. Donald Trump, similarly. But many sections of the media were neutral to them and indeed positively enthusiastic. And interestingly, we have a confluence of two factors in respect of an international news publication talking about US coverage of Huggy and Druggy. Jack Royston, a name that will be familiar to many of you, was always seen as pro-Sussex. He's the chief royal correspondent for Newsweek and could be relied upon to advance puff pieces on their behalf, and also to give Christopher Boozy, who has gone very quiet the last couple of years, a voice with regard to his witch hunt against certain YouTubers and commenters about this one's wife and Harry. Royston invariably trotted out the party line, but just recently there has been a subtle shift in his coverage of the two, a little more balanced, a less slavishly devoted to them, and it would appear that quite possibly not only has his bubble burst in relation to understanding what they are, but he's reporting on the fact that the US coverage as a whole has burst that bubble. He writes, "This one's wife and Prince Harry's US empire has been under mounting pressure in recent years after a series of high-profile articles in American magazines. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have long hated the British media." Now, pausing there, hatred's a strong word, but it probably is accurate. Harry's hatred comes from the perspective that he believes that the media were responsible for the death of his mother. And that has formed an entrenched view in this man's mind, not particularly bright, shaped by these early traumas. That viewpoint has taken a firm hold in his mind. This made him ideal fodder for this one's wife, because her hatred hasn't arisen from a particular act in the way that Harry's has, but rather simple acts of criticism towards her. As you know, criticism of this one's wife is challenge fuel. It gives her some form of recognition because she's being spoken about, but it threatens her need for control because it's critical, and therefore her narcissism has to take steps to deal with that. As part of that assertion of control, it has enabled her to harness Harry's inherent hatred of the media and utilize it for her own ends by suggesting that there is a racist campaign against her, that there is a smear campaign that was done deliberately to try and drive her from the country. All of that, of course, is the paranoia of the narcissist and the blame shifting that takes place, the lack of accountability to recognise that it was her own behaviours that resulted in the criticisms being launched towards her. Nevertheless, Royston writes, they've long hated the British media and framed their declining popularity in the United Kingdom as a product of tabloids poisoning the well of public opinion. Accordingly, it's not us, it's them. We haven't done anything wrong, we are the victims. But Royston notes that more recently, US magazines have been the outlets throwing the Sussexes into crisis mode, starting in 2022. And he takes a look through a number of instances where they have been criticised, which have shown the Sussexes in a poor light. I'm not going to read the entirety of the article to you because it really regurgitates things that you're already aware of. But I'll take you to the various instances that Royston highlights, namely the cut, which took place in 2022, which perhaps was the first to burst the bubble in that publication, when that New York magazine's The Cut dispatched Alison P. Davis to interview them. It wasn't a brash hit piece, but it was clear that Davis hadn't drunk the Kool-Aid, and at first it looked like it was flattering, but as a greater scrutiny demonstrated that actually it was taking the piss. And it included the memorable instance of this one's wife making guttural sounds. She's just moaning, which is hilarious. And as we know, this one's wife doesn't know the difference between guttural and visceral. So Royston references the cut. He then moves on to Variety and stated it's well past time for Harry and this one's wife 2.0. This was in relation to the biopic about their messy exit from the palace, but Variety gave it a scathing review. Andrew Wallenstein wrote, there can only be so many revelations left to share with the public now that the couple have exiled themselves away from their fractious coexistence with the monarchy. Given that they've beaten this horse to death, perhaps this one-trick pony is due for the glue factory. Of course, Harry and this one's wife would have you believe they are about so much more than their own story. He then points out that around this time of Variety giving them the scathing review, which was December 2022, that Newsweek began regularly polling US public opinion on the British monarchy with partner Redfield and Wilton, and captured a dramatic slump in the couple's popularity. And Royston revisits the figures. Next comes The Hollywood Reporter in September 2024, suggesting that the couple had a high churn rate because staff thought that this one's wife was a dictator in high heels. Then came Vanity Fair, which thrashed out a series of similar claims from Sussex insiders that compared this one's wife to a mean girl teenager. Thus, Royston identifies a number of publications that have criticised them and suggests that the bubble has burst in relation to these US magazines, which of itself seems accurate. But what is also particularly interesting is that Royston, as a hitherto signed up and paid up member of the Sussex fan club, has demonstrated that his position has shifted. What's interesting as well is that there are other articles that have criticised them but haven't been included. But Royston has picked 3 magazines and also his own organ to almost suggest, well, we've been saying that they're unpopular for quite some time. What might be behind this shift from somebody who hitherto was a cheerleader for them, that now has entered into open criticism? Well, one possibility is that payments are not being made for the PR puff pieces after all. You would only write favourably about them if you stood to gain something from them. Because anybody that looks at them objectively can see that they're a problematic couple, that they're unpopular, and you can see the many hypocrisies that this one's wife is engaged in, and unpleasant behaviours. Therefore, if you're going to write positively about them, it's either because they serve an agenda for you, witness people such as Dr. Shouty Shola, Misan Harriman, or that you're being paid to do it. Might it be that Newsweek isn't getting the spondulics like it once did? The alternative is that Royston has seen which way the wind is blowing and recognises they have become increasingly unpopular. More and more people are speaking out about the behaviours which hitherto had been kept quiet, and it's not a good look to be seen to soon be supporting them, because this is a sinking ship. I would suggest that it's the latter, that Royston, like many journalists, will go where the story is and will go where the popularity lies, and having been a cheerleader for some time, has now realised that not only has the bubble burst across the United States media in relation to these two, but it's burst for him personally. What do you think's behind this? And you'll notice, of course, that this is all part of the downward spiral that I predicted many years ago, that there's never going to be one explosive event that sinks these two, but it's effectively going to be death by 1,000 cuts. That there will be something that's done and again, so that more and more people see the accumulation of evidence which demonstrates that, in particular with relation to this one's wife, not only is she a narcissist, but she's a thoroughly unpleasant individual, and vapid and not particularly interesting. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.